States if they could, because, and they didn't give the reason for it. So with that, maybe you can give us some insight about this housing problem that we have in the United States, and maybe some solutions or some ideas.
Well, thanks, Nick. It's good to be with you. Hopefully, we're going to have other people joining us. I can be on today for about 45 minutes, and then I've got to head out to go to a meeting in the District of Columbia. I will talk about housing, but let me take it up a level, because I think the debate with regard to several of the recent elections, including New York City and Seattle, was broader. I think housing clearly was a piece of it, but it was really about the issue of affordability. And quite frankly, that's a real issue. And it's particularly a real issue in major metropolitan areas. And as we all know, when you talk about cost, there's two ways to look at it. Are the costs going up, or are they going down, or is the rate of increase going up, or is it going down? And I think, quite frankly, people get a lot confused. Once things go up, it's very difficult for them to come down, with two big exceptions. And those big exceptions are food cost and gas cost. And in fact, when you end up looking at the Consumer Price Index, they've got one index that doesn't count food and gas because they deem them to be too volatile, although they're obviously very, very important on a day-to-day basis with regard to most Americans. So I think housing is clearly one element of affordability, but housing also cuts both ways. The home equity that individuals have in their home tends to be the largest single asset that they have. One of the challenges that we have today is that, unlike you and I, who bought a home pretty early in life, in my case, I think I was 23 or 24 years old when we bought our first home. But then again, the cost of that home was $25,000, and we only had to put 5% down. Candidly, interest rates were higher than what they are right now. And I remember back in the early 1980s, when I moved from Houston to McLean, Virginia, which is a suburb of Washington, I had to have a primary mortgage of about 15%, and then a secondary mortgage that was higher than that. So everything in the world is relative. I think if we talk about housing, first understand, like every other aspect of cost, it's supply and demand. How much supply is there as compared to the demand? In the case of big cities like New York and Seattle, there's not enough supply, period. In addition to that, there's not enough affordable housing, which is a subset of overall supply. I think then you have to analyze, well, why is that the case? In many cases, that's the case because the amount of regulatory burdens, permitting and otherwise, ends up significantly reducing the ability to build quickly, and ends up significantly increasing the cost to build. Permitting can, and regulatory actions can end up increasing the cost of building, depending upon whether you're single family or multifamily home projects, anywhere from 20 to 40%. So one of the first things you have to do is you've got to increase supply, and you have to dramatically reduce regulatory burdens so that you can accelerate supply, and so you can reduce the cost of having to build these facilities. You also have to look at issues like, well, how much down payment is required, and is there some flexibility that could provide there? The other thing you have to look at is, well, what's the interest rate that is applicable, and the possibility to providing some flexibility there. The other thing you have to look at is, can you assume the mortgage of the prior person? And that's, because as we know, mortgage rates have been going up recently. They were at or near an all-time low just a few years ago, frankly, under the first Trump administration. The average person today who buys their first home is 40 years old, Whereas, as you mentioned, a number of years ago, it was 28 years old. And it's not just an issue of whether or not they're buying a house or not. It's a matter of the fact that that has an implication on do they get married? When do they start having a family? And the demographic implications associated with that. Because as you know, Nick, our birth rate in the United States is 1.62 for every woman. You need 2.1 in order for the population to increase. And that's why it's important to be able to have immigration, but we've got to differentiate between legal and illegal, and we need to have legal immigration that helps our economic growth and competitive posture, not just number of people. It's the quality of the people and the nature of the people that matters as well. And so, housing is a big issue. We could talk further about that, but so's food, so's energy. If you look at energy prices, crude oil's come down significantly. Gas has come down a little bit and is headed down. But if you look at electricity is a big problem. And that's, part of the cost to maintain a home. And electricity costs vary dramatically depending upon where you live. I used to live in Connecticut. My electric bill per kilowatt hour was double what it is here in Virginia. Now, why is that? That's because the state had put undue restrictions on the ability to generate electricity within the state, and therefore they had to end up buying on the spot market, to be able to meet demand. And typically they would end up buying at a price peak because because of just the basic issue of supply and demand. So if you look at states like Connecticut and New Jersey and and California, et cetera, where they've embraced green energy and placed too tough of restrictions with regard to fossil fuels, that's driving up energy costs, if you will. And then last but certainly not least, another issue that's very much in the news, another H in addition to housing, is healthcare. Healthcare costs are a huge problem. We're spending way more as a percentage of our economy on healthcare than other industrialized nations, and we're getting below average results. And we're to the point where people are arguing over, whether or not we ought to continue to subsidize people who make over 400% of the poverty level. We've got a number of systems where we need some fundamental reforms. And those are just, some of the ideas that we might want to try to explore in order to try to deal with this. But throwing more money at a system that it is not working is not the answer to these issues. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, these are obviously two big issues in the United States. In Spain, the healthcare costs are down. They're like half of what they are in the U.S., and they have more or less a universal healthcare system. In terms of housing, depending where you live, can be expensive in Spain, but there are other places that are very inexpensive to live. The overall affordability is probably 40% less, which I guess accounts for the reason you have so many expats here and 5 million expats around the world. It's because the cost of living is different. I have different reasons to move here. I had nothing to do really with that. I just wanted to go see a lot of European cities. I was tired of having to cross the pond. So it was just
Nick, housing prices vary dramatically depending upon where you live in the United States. In addition,
that's true too.
They vary dramatically depending upon what your proximity is to major metropolitan areas. I mean, take Washington. Washington is very expensive. If you want to end up living close to Washington, D.C., it's very expensive. I live 8 miles from the White House, and it's not inexpensive. And so therefore you have more and more people who are living further out. And in addition to that, they're also teaming up. You have multiple people living together in order to try to be able to afford it. That's very typical for young people, if you will. And as long as you have adequate mass transit, that can work. But if you don't have adequate mass transit, it's a different story.
Yeah. Well, also having such a huge amount of your budget going to housing and healthcare leaves people very little to invest. And so it becomes a a major problem because they're not investing. What they're doing is they're just surviving on a treadmill to hell because they're spending so much money on housing and healthcare. But we'll see what our panel says around the world. We bring in Sasha Starr from Canada. I don't know if they have the same problem there. And I think we have Sharif from Bangladesh, but maybe we'll start with Sasha because he can give a Canadian perspective on how they deal with healthcare and housing. I think these are going to be the two big political issues on this next midterm because it's already showing up in the local elections that these two are big issues. So what are your thoughts there in Canada, housing and healthcare?
Okay, healthcare is relatively good. I wouldn't say it's a fantastic or anything. It's relatively good, at least that it's affordable. It's not even, I would say, inexpensive. It's zero cost. How you call zero cost? Inexpensive, or there is no monetary value of it of any kind. I don't know how to call it. Even if I would pay $1 a month, so I would say that it's inexpensive health. But when you pay $0 a month, then I don't know how to do it. It's basically a free healthcare system. That's all what it is. You may argue that it's coming off from your taxes or elsewhere, or somebody at the end of the day paying it, and I would agree with that. But when you go to see your doctor and you don't need except your medical card, the OHIP, Ontario Health Insurance card, you don't need any money. You just keep your wallet away and you go to see the doctor. You don't need your wallet. And you don't have a medical bill that you will pay a month or 3 months later for thousands of dollars. No, you don't have. So from that point, there is an enormous difference between Canada and United States. And it's clearly 100% of Canada and 0 for the United States. Now, about housing. Housing is a more complicated issue that the market actually, it went up during the COVID and post-COVID years. But now it's coming down, at least in the Toronto area and many others. So it's coming down, and it's probably went down about 15% from where it was a couple of years ago. Now, about affordable housing, more and more, at least in the Toronto area, there are building affordable housing. But I'm not an expert to tell you all the merits, everything about it, because some people are getting very nice housing, paying a fraction of its commercial value. Some people are in line to get that, and there's a lot of facilities for people who are like myself, or most of them are older, to get into that. I haven't investigated that either, but I know that for, say, $5,000 a month, you can get decent facilities without any difficulties.
Can I mention, Nick, that I think housing is what we ought to try to focus on for the most part today, and healthcare is something that there are dramatic differences between the Canadian healthcare system and the U.S. system, and I think we ought to have a separate session or sessions on that, because I agree with you that I think housing will be a major issue in the midterms, but I think healthcare will be a bigger issue in the midterms here in the United States.
Yeah, and the reason I was saying that is that the young people who showed up in these elections in New York and also in Seattle, their major concern was housing. They couldn't afford basically they can't afford a place to live, and they're starting to show up to vote. And that brought in Democrat socialists into New York and also into Seattle. And Seattle and New York both have problems. Is if you ever go to Seattle, you're like between Lake Washington and Puget Sound, a tiny little strip of land. Seriously, there's no place to build. And New York, of course, is between the East River and the Hudson River. So they have the same problem. Of course, you can build around, but it is so developed So they have a real problem in those two cities, but it also goes to other cities. Now we're going to go to Bangladesh, a very interesting country because its population exceeds that of Russia, yet the landmass is about the size of Florida. So we'll see how the housing issues over in Bangladesh. We'll go to Dr. Sharif Rana if he's not on the phone.
I think he is.
He's on the phone.
He's on the phone.
He might not be available. You know,
not right this second. He's not.
Not this second. Right? Yeah. Well, the data that we've been reading, though, of course, is the people aren't buying homes until they're in their 40s. And what was also shocking is that 40% of women between 19 and 40, if they could, they would leave the United States. In other words, they were looking to expat, but they don't. I don't think they even know how to, or they could afford that. But they're not looking at the United States being a wonderful world of a place to live. And and they might be right. The metrics, the crime is up. The housing is unaffordable. Healthcare is up. The United States may not be the best place in the world to live in the next. Next decade.
But Nick, here's part of the problem. Okay, part of the problem is you don't know how good or bad you have it until you have something to compare it to. And if you look at the United States, there's tremendous disparity depending on where you live with regard to cost. Also with regard to a number of other factors, quality of education is another example. Furthermore, before they start thinking about leaving the United States, they ought to think about whether there are other places within the United States that make sense. Furthermore, we have more and more jobs, especially for highly skilled, people where there's a supply and demand imbalance, where they can work remotely, so they can live anywhere they want and be able to be employed. And then lastly, and certainly not least, it's one thing to say I'm not happy where I am, but not only looking for other alternatives in the United States, but have a better understanding what the situations are elsewhere in the world. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have it better someplace else. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people are very superficial. They don't do their homework. They try to come up with a simple answer when in reality they haven't explored the options. And that's critical in order to be able to make sound judgments.
Well, before we go to Dr. Sharif, there was another study by the Rand Corporation. I'm going to try to bring in the person who did the study. He's a doctor he received his PhD from University of Maryland. And the study was quite interesting that he was showing that half or more of the increase in overall wealth in the last 10 years went to 1% of the population. So his arguments were basically this: the economy has grown, and if you're in the 1%, you benefited. Now, the data I keep seeing is like this: the bottom 50% own 2% of the assets. And most of the money has been sucked up into, if you're in the top 1%, you sucked up the most. You're in the top 10%, you're next to the most. But if you're in the bottom 50% in the United States, you went nowhere. In other words, the economy grew and you didn't benefit. This is going to be a subject of discussion, I think, that is going to be serious, because they can vote if they're smart enough. And it could create a democratic socialist government in the United States, because they're saying, hey, it's great that Elon Musk, or whatever his name is, benefits from his $1 trillion package. It's great that the 1% benefit, great that they don't have any problems with housing. But what about everybody else? So this is going to be another demographic problem the U.S. is going to face.
Nick, as you know, there are growing gaps between the haves and the have-nots in the United States. That's a reality. And you're pointing out one fact that supports that. I read, and I don't have the study in front of me, that about half of the people in America are living paycheck to paycheck, and they do not have an adequate savings reserve to the extent that they become unemployed or have disruption in their work. As you know, we just got done with the longest federal government shutdown in history. where either people had to work and didn't get paid, or they couldn't work and didn't get paid. And so even the federal workforce, which quite frankly has an above average compensation structure, especially when you consider benefits, then even they were having difficulty being able to make ends meet when they weren't getting paid, whether they were working or not. Of course, they're going to get retroactive pay. All of them are now that the government's back open. Another reason why shutdowns are stupid. It ends up costing you money, dramatically reduce productivity in customer service, and further reduce public trust and confidence in government. It can't go much lower. So, in any event, so go ahead.
That's all the bad news. We'll go to Dr. Sharif. It looks like he's off the phone now, and see what Asia has in terms of housing and healthcare, with a country that is bigger than Russia, but landmass about the size of Florida. So
let's say I was in Malaysia and Singapore this reason. Malaysia, actually, I want to say that in terms of affordability, housing, food, world-class infrastructures, definitely Malaysia has, Singapore has, and they have excess actually real estate. Let's say they build a 40-story building, 70% actually occupied by the owners or everyone. Rest of the things actually 30% not utilizing. So Asia Pacific story is different. Bangladesh story or India story in terms of housing, definitely still we are struggling everywhere we have room. But what is the different, what I understand from this dialogue or from my experience from US, cost of living, I believe that our whole economic system reality is collapse. It's not only USA, not only Bangladesh, not only even India or other place. Our economic system actually collapsed because of last 30 and 40 years, how we developed this capital society, how we developed this political system. You see there are a lot of change actually happening. So why it's happening? Definitely, I want to give credit all of the Silicon Valley large companies, especially the social media, artificial intelligence, and especially the youth, young populations. If they are coming, Gen Z, they are coming to the power. They are engaging with this economy. I said that in Asia Pacific, we have around 750 million youth, those who are under 30 years old. And from there, 10%, they are entrepreneur. They build up startup, they build a $1 billion company. And if you see this Asia Pacific, even in Bangladesh, fastest growing billionaires from Bangladesh, or from India, or from China, or from Singapore and Indonesia. So this is very interesting moment how Asia Pacific is growing economically. Secondly, you are focusing on these educations and healthcare or food. What I see that because of the affordability, still Asian people compared to USA, they are in good shape. This is my honest opinion. Third things, I see that the Western world, they have a lot of debt. Like the students, they have educational loan. So how come they survive, right? When they have a lot of debt, how they can contribute, how they can move for these things. This may cause some sort of effect, but this 5 years, next 5 years, I want to say what I'm discussing last 6 years. And thank you, Nick Palveda, you give me this opportunity, you support me. Many people reject me, but I say that the time for talent economy, time for the youth, because of technology, because of the lot of young population, because I'm sorry to say our old group of people last 30 and 40 years, they do a lot of wrong things. Capitalism with debt, with wrong banking systems, with wrong corporate system, it's collapse. Even in Bangladesh, 6 bank collapse. Even in India, many banking system is collapse. Second things, politics. Politics actually go in a wrong way. They only support these rich people, right? What you were discussing, list Elon Musk also involved in politics. What should the beauty of, like, what is the beauty of politics? Politicians should be neutral. They will be very educated. When business organization trying to develop this monopoly or control, they come and they do work for grassroots level people. But we do different. All of the big powerhouse, they are actually controlling the politics. But things are changing. You see what happened in Bangladesh. You see what happened in Nepal. You see what happened in Sri Lanka, what happened in Madagascar, Indonesia. All of the young people say, enough, it's enough. We want to save our future. We want to involve in politics. We want to, because the community is some point more powerful than billionaires. Community is more powerful than government. So because of this social media, youth people become more connected and they can understand the voice of youth. They can understand the community build up and their political empowerment. They are not afraid. I know Nick is very smart, but if I say, hey, do you want to join in the politics? He said, no, I do not want. But they are very smart. They want to take risk, right? They come to the front line. And these things will happen. What we see in US economy and politics also changing. I believe next 5 years will be very interesting moment. Knowledge economy transferred to talent economy. Many young entrepreneurs will come and they will take the lead and they will solve your housing problem, food industry problem. Many politicians, young politicians will come and they will take responsibility and they will come to power. But definitely the old generations, your wisdom is very important. That's why I build up this Kokoro. Things is very interesting. And this kind of podcast, this kind of knowledge-oriented things is very important. Look, David Walker, grassroots level Bangladeshi student, they know who is David Walker, who is Nick Palveda, who is Sasha. It's very valuable for them. So that is the way actually this technology, this social media, this pod TV, everyone is contributing. Everyone actually empowering the talent economy. So this is new future and this is the new community. We have to work together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Shuri, first, I agree with you that I think young people are waking up and are getting more actively engaged in politics. And I think that's fully appropriate because, as I've said many times before, one of the things that our country was founded on was the concept of stewardship. And what stewardship means is that as a leader, your responsibility is not just to deliver positive results today, not just to leave things better off when you leave than when you came, but better positioned for the future. And I hate to say it, but my generation has not delivered on that promise. And in fact, has done the exact opposite, which is why I fight so hard for changing our course. If you look at our finances, what's going on is irresponsible, unethical, immoral. We are spending too much on consumption, not enough on investment. We're spending too much on seniors and not enough on children. We are mortgaging the future of our kids and grandkids and future generations when they are going to face a lot tougher competition in an increasingly interconnected and interdependent world. That has to change. Now, young people for a long time were not involved in politics. And now more Americans, and we can talk about how things are going in Canada and Bangladesh, but now more Americans are not wanting to be associated with either major political party. And now about 50% of all registered voters in the United States are unaffiliated or independent, like myself, all right? But they do want to be more engaged in the process. And the only way you can engage in the process is through collective action and to vote. We had a very famous president here who I think is, if not definitely top three, in my opinion, in the history of the United States. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln said that with public support, you can do anything. Without public support, you can do nothing. And I think young people are finally waking up to that concept, and they're waking up to the concept of the most important words in the U.S. Constitution are the first three. We, the people, are responsible and accountable for what does or does not happen. And if you don't actively engage, you have no basis to complain. Sasha?
Dave, I wouldn't be so optimistic as you are on the younger generation. So I'll tell you why. They don't have a platform, whether it's a third party or anything. There is no platform for them. one. Number two, economically, they are in the most challenging time in the history because most of them live with parents. Most of them are, I have even here in Toronto, I have some friends, they have son, 63 years old, he lives with them. Because not that he cannot afford, probably he is, but it's much more convenient for him and for them because he drives them for shopping and so on and on and on. And there are, trust me, more than one person in Toronto who is living 63 years old. They call him my baby, but it doesn't change anything. So people who are young and who are intelligent and who could do a lot of wonderful things, by not having place to live, they cannot call themselves independence. They cannot call themselves our future. Oh, you're 40 years old, so in 5 years you'll be 45, and in 10 years 55. What's the future? What are you talking about? And this is happening to most of the young people, at least here in the Western Hemisphere. In Europe, I don't know, Nick probably should tell us more of a situation in Europe, but I see what's happening here. So I wouldn't be so optimistic on the young people.
I just want to add one point. As many North American students from Stanford, San Jose State University, they're working in my team. I always invite them, oh, hey, why don't you come to Bangladesh or come to India or Singapore and do your business or take some jobs. From startup industry, what I learned, the positive momentum, right? I think many of you have experience from startup industry. You never know. You cannot say this is constant. It will happen. They have a lot of financial burden. They live with very poor conditions, so they cannot. Mamdani, like I think, who knows him 1 year before? He win. All of the billionaires expend money against him. He win. You never know. So what we see from our experience from startup industries, and especially the young people, they engage with this startup industry, suddenly they work, and suddenly they get this positive momentum. So I think that North American young also have compared to Asian students or African students, because I heavily involved with youth, they have very good ethical standard. Their work ethics is very, very good. They are very committed for their work, especially American young people, how I see from California at least. We should respect them. They can do anything in their life. At least I respect all of them. How I see all of my colleagues, my friends, and everyone, they are working with this talent economy. They are very dedicated, very honest with their work. So those who are honest, those who have dedications, nobody can stop them. So I'm more futuristic. I'm more optimistic about youth in North America.
Coming back to housing, I'll take a personal experience. My granddaughter, who just graduated from nursing school at Duquesne, is living at home. And the reason she's living at home is it's convenient. Her mother happens to be a nurse at the same hospital she works at, and she makes good money, and over time she'll make very good money because nursing is a very much in demand profession, also the most trusted profession in the United States. But she wants to save in order to be able to buy something, and it doesn't. We talk about a home. More and more, I think we're going to see multifamily housing rather than single family housing, especially if somebody wants to be closer to the metropolitan area. And as we talked about before with New York and Seattle, there are constraints with regard to land. But the answer is you build up. You have to build up rather than out. But you also have to make sure that you don't have undue restrictions, coming back to one of the things I said at the beginning about your ability to do so.
Yeah, also in Spain, they build up. It's like New York because you're in Barcelona, especially. There's some other places outside you can actually get a house here, but in Spain, you have to think Manhattan because you're between the water and the mountains. The rift running this way on Barcelona, and then you're at the Mediterranean Sea. So everybody here lives in apartments because there is no house. In other words, as you would think in the United States. When in the United States, I had a house, you get the lawn, you get all the golf course, all that stuff. But here you have to think more like Manhattan because it's built up, but it's also very convenient to get around here. In terms of Bangladesh and Asia, the demographics I've been seeing, because I wanted to pull out your book here, one, America in 2040, still a superpower. Well, in 2040 may be true, but by 2075, they're showing that China will be the world's largest economy, and India will be the second world's largest economy, and Bangladesh will be between India and China. So it's very important to note that no matter how we're looking at it, if the demographics are correct, 50% of the world's population don't even live close to North America. They live in Asia. So, David, should we be looking more toward Asia and seeing what they're doing over there when it comes to housing, like in China and India?
We should be looking not just within our own borders. We should be looking around the world. And unfortunately, that's not one of the things that Americans do very well. They assume that, that since we're the leading superpower on earth, that we must be as good or better than anybody else and about everything. And that's just not true. By the way, the latest data that I've seen is that Nigeria will have a larger population than the United States by 2050. And in addition to that, it's important to understand that while the U.S. has the largest economy based upon nominal dollars GDP, China has the largest economy based upon purchasing power parity as it relates to GDP. China has got demographic challenges just like the U.S. does, and India has now passed China for the largest population. So, we live in interesting times. I'm going to have to go. I hope that you guys can continue the panel discussion or whatever. I encourage you to talk about the housing issue, what the differences are. And I do, Nick, encourage us to have one or more sessions in the future on healthcare, because I actually think that's a bigger issue than housing, although both are very important.
Yes, we certainly will do healthcare. That was something that we had to work on almost every week when I was at my old company, because it was a challenge for certain.
Absolutely.
So we'll continue discussing on housing, because housing, it looks like that was a big demographic issue. Is we need to increase the supply of housing and figure out ways that we can actually do that. Now, when I did check out in Florida, they built this thing called the Villages. You guys probably don't even know about it. It's in the middle of the swamps of Florida, like it's in the middle of Florida. And they just started building homes there. Now they have over 146,000 people living in all these homes in Florida because they just cookie cuttered, because they could get the land real cheap. Now, that's an advantage you actually have in the United States, because you have a lot of land that you can build on. It just happens not to be in the cities. So now go, Dr. Sharif. Let's ask you, in Bangladesh, do you guys, because I looked at Bangladesh, I'm going like, do you guys have any land to build houses? It looks like you ran out of land. You got more people, but where's the land?
Yeah, we don't. It's correct. Like we have a lot of people, 171 million, maybe 180 million people, but our land is very small. That's why all of the people go for high-rise building. And but still, I want to say that Bangladesh economy good because of our hardworking people, very, very hardworking people, Bangladeshi people. So that's why, compared to, let's say, other countries, how I see Malaysia, how I see the Singapore or UAE or other countries, especially Europe, we don't have any social securities. But people survive because our economy is doing good because of the hard work and consistent contributions and other things. But I think that USA can invite Bangladeshi investors for housing sectors. I'm trying to do these things with one of my colleagues in Georgia. They are developing tiny home. First, they initially go with a 100 tiny home in USA. So I'm inviting Bangladeshi investor to invest in USA tiny home. So the same way the Asian investors, they can invest in housing sectors. Honestly speaking, for these reasons, uh, at least Trump, maybe Jatovi can contribute. Like he has to open the market. He has to make a real business deal with this, and they do not have to create that, hey, this is a country nobody can come. They have to create the opportunities that, okay, everybody come and play and make business, and even you can make money, you can contribute to your country. It's alignment, collaborations. So I believe that what you see, this Asia Pacific, this India or China, their revolutions, economical growth, uh, I think that USA can be a very good ally for emerging economy, and they can bring a lot of investment in their housing sectors. And USA has a lot of talent, especially the youth. They also can grab opportunities like Bangladesh or India and other things, and they can solve this complex problem. I always not go for dialogue. I always love to take action. I'm taking action, test and trial basis. What I'm do research, what I'm getting as the outcomes. I'm trying to see this thing is happening. Like 10 American students, like a startup, they are working with me, and I'm getting some positive result through this process. So I request that world has very good opportunity. America is very beautiful country. I teach the Chinese students, the Chinese schools. Honestly speaking, even the Chinese students, they love American culture. They love Hollywood. They love open society, right? Like in California, they heavily invest in every place in housing and this and that. So I honestly speaking, this immigrations, this trade deals, all of the big things, the top level, what they do, it's actually not good for what you discuss, this 50% community or this grassroots level communities. So if you really want to be a good political leader, if you really want to be a catalyst, so you have to open your mind. Definitely you have right to protect your country, but if you really want economical freedom, if you want economical success for your greater community, only not for Trump, only not for Bezos, if you really want to great success, I think still USA has a lot of beautiful things. They have Ivy League university, they have world-based defense, they have all of the best research center, largest tech company. Still they can contribute a lot for the global economy, and still they can be the catalyst for this world. So that is called, even I said that Chinese student, American student, I can learn from the classroom, I can understand as a professor from the classroom. They also love the American culture. So we should not create a system that we hate each other. Better we build up a better community. What the Pod TV is developing, right? You are actually developing community through your podcast. So this is the approach America can follow, and they can get greater financial success.
Right.
Nick, you can come to Bangladesh. Sasha, you can come to
Yeah,
Bangladesh.
just got to get me a plane ticket. I'm actually going to go to Turkey in January. Then I'm going to Venice in March, and then I'm going to Scotland in June. So I just have to put it on my itinerary, my travel itinerary. I haven't gone to Dhaka yet. It's on the list.
Yeah.
Sharif. So eventually, I'll hit that.
Just recently, I applied for a grant. I think you are in the CC for
Yeah.
this BBC. We have elections in February. So Pod TV
Right.
can create a very good diplomatic, politicals, or media related activities in Bangladesh. That's
Yeah.
why, yeah, you are in the CC. I applied for this grant. So why don't the before election you visit Bangladesh? You meet with our prime ministers. We meet with our political parties or our corporations. Maybe you can go for more business collaborations for Pod TV.
Yeah.
I can invite you all because we have a plan for conference before the elections. I want to invite you all.
As long as you have good restaurants, I'll go. I'm pretty easy. As long I forgot this. There's a great Istanbul restaurant down the street that I eat at. It's just unbelievably
Yeah.
good. Speaking of food that I'm not so sure about, well, I go to Sasha in Canada because I have been looking at real estate there to buy because I'm going to buy a second home. just to have a place to hang out when it gets hot here. But it looks like Canada is pretty expensive. I know you chose Toronto, but I'm saying that I didn't see any bargains. What are you looking at in the Canadian market? It looks like housing isn't cheap there. I also looked at Collingwood.
I don't think that Canadian real estate is cheap, at least here in Ontario, in central Ontario where I live. It's not cheap at all, and depends on what you're looking to buy. If you want to buy a summer property, a cottage around Muskoka, it's north of Toronto, a couple of hours.
Okay, well, the thing is, see, I have a little spec on my. Here's my deal. I always want to make at least $100,000 on each house I buy. So the thing is, I need $100,000 spread, and I haven't seen the $100,000 spread in Canada. I was going it looks like everything is marked up pretty good, at least in the areas I looked in. I looked at that place where there's the chess tournament, and the housing prices were pretty high. And I looked in Toronto, it's pretty high, and I'm going I didn't see the bargain city yet. So I didn't see Canada being a bargain, even though we have a very good exchange rate. Even putting that into factors, it just didn't look like. And if I don't see it as a bargain, that means other people that are trying to invest or buy a place there, it cannot be a cheap place to live. So are young people having problems in Canada as well as the U.S.?
Yeah, of course, they do have problems similar to States. A lot of young people, let's see, they complete their universities, they're going for master's and PhD, and by the time they're 26, 27 years old, they may have a high-paying job and still will not be able to purchase a house. Apartment, but not in the center of the city, but somewhere maybe airport area or even farther and so on. So then you have to commute. And a lot of young people don't want to commute. They want to live right where the job is. So they don't want to commute and they want an affordable house. It rules them out. They cannot do anything. They might as well go to Bangladesh or just anywhere in the world because they will not make it in Canada.
Right.
And for the price, all this concept of American dream where you study, you get your degree, you get your job, you get a house, you get a car, you have a nice wife with kids, and then second car. That American dream is dead.
I agree.
Okay? It's dead.
I agree. I agree. It's dead. In other words, the American dream needs to look internationally. But since we have somebody from the Raleigh-Durham area, and I used to own a couple homes in the area, Raleigh-Durham, but I had one big problem with North Carolina. They don't believe in mass transportation. In other words, I can't ditch my bloody car. In other words, I can't get from Raleigh to Durham. I have to have a car. Get from Durham to Chapel Hill, got to have a car. And Duke University was one of the people that stuck their nose in the way of mass transportation. So Jatovi, why is it that your neck of the woods is so mass transportation, where here in Spain, there would be a train I could take from Raleigh to Durham to Chapel Hill to the airport. You can go everywhere. You can go from the airport to Barcelona to Badalona to Les Corts to everywhere. They have trains, subways, trams, buses, and Durham you have like nothing. I mean, why are you guys so adamant against mass transportation?
That's just a U.S. thing at this moment. A lot of people in the U.S. and it's just not a North Carolina thing. There's that battle in California. There's a battle in numerous other places as well over the mass transit issue. It's just a cultural difference because the U.S. has always been about cars. And then everywhere else was about everywhere else was just had a different mindset around that. So yeah, I mean, it's just
you cannot compare public transportation and cars. Forget about the prices. What's more expensive? What's less expensive? It's not the point. The point is that in a car you have your own cocoon where you can be absolutely independent, listen to music, whatever you want to listen to, drive wherever and whenever you want to drive, here and there. You cannot even compare it. And I don't care about European system of public transportation. That's not the same when you're driving your own car. And when I was in Europe traveling, I was always renting a car, and I enjoyed tremendously driving in a car any place, any time that I wanted to, without dependence on anything at all. So let's not to compare it. I'm not saying that cars are better than public transportation, whether it's Europe or North America. It doesn't matter. It's just you are comparing apple to oranges. That's all.
Yeah, but it's so much more efficient, and also it saves costs. And let's go talk about young people in the United States. They not only are facing housing costs, they also face car cost. In other words, it costs a lot of money. I'm sorry, Sasha, to drive a car, to pay for the insurance, to pay for the gas, to pay for the maintenance. So they get double whammy or triple whammy. They pay student debt, housing, car, and the end of the day, they don't have any money.
Well, they have even more money if they will walk and they will use bicycles. Okay, then you will really save money, and that's what you have to do.
Well. Here they do have scooters, but I can tell you that even when I go to Prague and Budapest, I just take the public transportation. By the way, in Budapest, I should say, the public transportation, because you're a senior, is free. So I can jump on the trams and go everywhere in Budapest for free. Unfortunately, in Prague, you had to pay it, but it's like nothing. It's butkus, you know? So, and it was so efficient because in Prague, I could get everywhere on the metro lines, and just like I can in Barcelona. It seems to be a very efficient way to move 6 million people, as opposed to, and I don't know if it's in Canada, but certainly as in Seattle. You don't drive anywhere. It's not like it's fun, Sasha. Last time I was in Seattle, you know what I did? I sat in traffic for 45 minutes waiting to go a half a mile. Is that fun? I don't think so. You know, and Seattle had an opportunity because they built a metro line, but it was only 1 mile, and then they stopped it. So unfortunately, Seattle is still backwards. But hey, it's no fun sitting in major cities like Atlanta on the 285 waiting for a half an hour to move it half a mile. Certainly isn't fun in Seattle. So not that I'm against cars. When I went to Salt Lake, I rented a car because it's the only way you can get around the U.S. But certainly it is not, to me, the end all of transportation. I don't know about DACA, so I'll ask Dr. Sharif. Can I fly into Dhaka and get around through mass transportation, or do I have to rent a car? Dr. Sharif.
Yeah. What's your question again?
Do I need to rent a car when I'm in Dhaka, or can I get around through the subways and taxi cabs, etc.?
What about
if you visit,
you can use camels there and get to ride camel anywhere you want to go?
Or do I have to get a camel?
Okay. First thing first, you can get car for visiting Dhaka, but it's a highly density populated country. It's not like Europe or not like USA. Secondly, we have train. Definitely in Dhaka city we have train, so you can use it. But there are a lot of car and bus support and everything, so you can visit around Dhaka. And especially I want to invite you in Chittagong, because Chittagong, as you are innovative and you have your media and everything, so we build up one of the largest business incubations, where actually we are developing 100 startups. You can stay how many years you want. You can do your business. It's 100% free for at least 18 months. A lot of opportunities, and especially you can get on many intellectuals, like what you see in Stanford, what you see in different place in California. This is also a very good place, and Chittagong can be a place for moving around. It has hill track, it has seaport and all of the things, and it can be next Singapore. A lot of good things is happening. So beside Dhaka, I think you can visit Chittagong. It's good for business, it's good for strategic alignment, and I think your government has close alignment with Bangladesh government for this Chittagong developments and all of the things, because through this area they only can control this Belt and Road Initiative. So this is very
Okay, well, I
interesting.
will certainly put that in an advisement. And the last thing before we leave, the shot NH3 that Aronian missed against Aragasi. Come on, Sasha. Anyone that World Cup? How could he miss that? How could he miss that and call himself a 2,700 player? I don't know.
If not 3 times, and all this once the round is over, there is a analysis of previous games, and I love to see. Nick, I'll tell you, the 2 days when they're playing classical games, it's a
Yeah.
complete waste of time, because most of grandmasters even don't want to play them. They agree to a draw after 15 moves or
Right.
20 moves or so on, and they're playing often a playoff day. They're playing Rapids and Blitz and Armageddon if needed, and that's how they progress. And it starts from Carlsen and it goes all down. There are very few people who are willing to play classical games. And I'll tell you why. Let's say you're studying a variation. Let's say you like Italian game. So you study with a white, with a 5 or 6 computer programs, and you see, okay, this move is probably better than others. A little bit, a tiny bit. Okay, so I'll play this. And what he can play to defend, he may play this or that. But your opponent also studying the same Italian game with the same computer programs. So you're wasting a lot of time, energy, efforts to get just even with your opponent. So where's your brains? So both of you have to agree, okay, we'll make 2 draws, and then we'll find out in a repeat and blitz who is going farther.
And last thing, your friend Dashenko has made it to the quarterfinals. I don't know if you noticed that. So
yeah,
but
we lost today's game.
Oh, we did. I didn't see today's results. Yeah. Anyway, we're at what the hour, so we do want to thank our guests from around the world, and we'll see you next week on Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. Take care. Bye-bye.